Okay, let's go. So, ladies, what I want to do is if you don't mind, and if you want to do something as well on the parasha, I'm happy to do that. But I'd like to look at something to do with Chanukah, just so that we can elevate our Chanukah into a different space. You know me, when it comes to Chagim, to try and find something new, something different, something that will make the Chag more meaningful. Because
won't you?
we keep doing the same things, and let's try and see if we can find a little bit more meaning. So let's just I want to put out a couple of questions and a couple of ideas, and then we can discuss them, talk about them, and Be'ezrat Hashem, things will allow us to somehow engage with Chanukah, as I say, just differently. So let's begin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you on some of the sources, just so that we can try and engage with it properly. So the first, as we go, we'll see now, is there's a pasuk in Mishlei, an amazing pasuk in Mishlei, which we all know. It says, Chanoch lena'ar al pi darko. Educate Chanoch, which means like to educate, lena'ar al pi darko. According to al pi darko, according to his way, according to their way, according to its way, right? Why? Ki yaskin lo yasir mimenu. If they get old, when they get old, that's how we translate it. Lo yasir mimenu. They will not deviate from that way. In other words, there's a derech that we need to try and assist the child to go on, and it's not our derech, it's their derech, and it's so important that we realize sometimes we want to educate children according to our derech, and obviously when you talk about our derech, we're not talking about the overriding corpus of Yiddishkeit, of Judaism, of halacha, of hashkafa, but according to a specific way of being. But children are different. You know, I've got, thank God, many children, Baruch Hashem, Kanan Hora, and so the first one is very, very serious. He's very into rules. The second one, less so. The third one, he's much of a free thinker. So we can't keep them all, expecting them all to be the same. So Chanoch lefnar pi darko, we got to keep them on their path. Ki yazkin, when they get old, that's how we translate it. Lo yasur mimenu. But the Gemara tells us that a zakain is misha kana chokhmah, is a person who's acquired chokhmah, who's acquired wisdom. And I think that we can say that in the world that we live today, people are, there's that term, beyond their years, right? That they even when they're young, they're old beyond their years. And what does that mean? It means that they've got a certain knowledge, a certain way, a certain understanding. And in the world that we live, where there's so much information around, so the challenges are enormous. And because the challenges are enormous, so then ki yazkin, I don't think only means when they get old. I think when they get more knowledge, when you bring up a child, the only portal of knowledge is you as the parents and the place that you put them in. But as they get older, then they get exposed to more. And it all depends on what we give them as the foundations to enable them to navigate that additional chokhmah, that additional information, that additional exposure that they get. Now, what's that got to do with Chanukah? Because Chanukah is Chanukah. Chanukah is the usage of the word chanoch, which means to educate. So therefore, Chanukah also must have something to do with the way we educate. And what I want to look at is an idea that I've been thinking about a lot, because there are numerous places that it keeps coming up. So let's first start with this Gemara. This Gemara is important because this Gemara is going to tell us the essence of what Chanukah is. So Chanukah, if we look carefully, we can see it says the following. It's the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, our sages taught us, mitzvah Chanukah, the actual mitzvah of Chanukah itself. Just ignore the English for this part, because the English doesn't have all of this. The essential mitzvah of Chanukah is ner ishu beitor. You only have to light one candle. That's all you have to have. One candle every night. That's the essential mitzvah. V'ham mahadran. If you want to be mahadran, you want to be even more beautifying the mitzvah. Ner lekol echad ve'echad. Each person in the household can light their own single candle. V'ham mahadran mina mahadran. And the most beautiful way to do the mitzvah is a machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Yom Rishon Madlik Shmoina. Mikan ve'elech, on day one, you light 8, and then you go less and less and less up to 1. And then there's Beis Hillel who say Yom Rishon Madlik Achas, or that on the first day you light 1, and then you go more and more and more. So there's this big machlokes, this argument between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. What do? Do you light 1? Do you light 8 and then go down, or do you light 1 and then go up to 8? And what's fascinating is that in halakha, we never go according to the Mahadran opinion, not as the basic halakha. But here, for really, the basic halakha is that we light according to Mahadran Mina Mahadran, which must mean, I must say to us, there's something about the candles on the night of Chanukah that demand from a beautification, from beyond the halachic basic requirements, that demands something from us that there's such a big argument in the Mahadran part of it. It's not even in the basics. It's in the Mahadran part that there's this big argument. And what's this argument all about? So let's try and get a little bit of more information on that. So if we look, I'm going to look at the one explanation first. And the one explanation is that there's an argument again. There's an argument on the argument, right? That's nothing like a bit of Torah, right? So there's an argument is how to understand what Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai are saying. So according to the one opinion, it says, Chadamar time, and the reason is for Beit Shammai, is Keneged Parei HaChag. That is it comes to corresponds to the Parei HaChag. The Parei HaChag were the 70 bulls that were brought on Sukkot. And every day there was one less. So it started with 13, and every day they lessened up, down, all the way down. That's the Parei HaChag. Those Parei HaChag represent the nations of the world. And the reason why they go down and down and down every day of Sukkot, because as Sukkot becomes a more powerful Chag, so the power of the nations of the world in their influence over us becomes less and less and less, until it gets ultimately to Shmini Atzeret, where there's no more Parei HaChag, because we have a direct engagement with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the Parei HaChag. But time of Beit Hillel, and the reason for Beit Hillel is the Malin B'Kodesh V'Einu Meridim, because we always go up in Kedusha and we don't go down. So we start with 1 and therefore we go up to 8. And what's important to understand is these two opinions of Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai are just totally different from one another. One is saying that we need to be consistent. We need to be consistent in our lighting of our candles, and then the power of the world around will dissipate. Whereas Beit Hillel is saying, no, it doesn't help to be consistent. And what we need to do is constantly bring more and more and more and more. And the more we bring, the more we will dissipate. Why is that? So the reason for that is based on a Midrash, I think. And I'd like to go through this Midrash, because this Midrash is really one of the most beautiful concepts that come out for Chanukah, which you may have heard before, and if you do, it's good chazorah, but if you haven't, I think you'll be amazed. So the Midrash says the following: if we understand that Chanukah is all about the or, the light, right? What is the thing about the light? We light our candles ideally outside at the doorposts, and the purpose of that is to be what we call Pirsumei Nusa, to be Mafarsem Nanes, to advertise the miracle. The question is, what miracle are we advertising? Because if you really think about it, if somebody walks past your Chanukah candles, they're not going to say, "Oh, by the way, that's amazing. Gee, now I remember that it was that all these miracles that happened with the Greeks." Blah, blah, blah. No one knows that story. So what's the miracle that we're trying in such a profound way to advertise to everybody? So I think the answer lies in that Gemara that said to us that the essential mitzvah of Chanukah is ner ish ubeito. That each person has one candle in their home. Why is that? Because there's something about the Jewish home. Now, if we remember that there were an incredible amount of what we call gzeirot, of terrible decrees against the Jewish people during the period of the Hellenists. And one of those decrees that the Midrash tells us, it's another Midrash, not the one I want to look at right now, but I just want to give you a bit of background. The Midrash tells us that there was a decree that was brought by the Greek rulers at the time, is that no Jewish homes were allowed to lock their doors. No one was allowed to lock their doors. They were not allowed to bolt, they weren't allowed to have locks or anything like that, which means really is that people could come in and out as they wanted to. And if you don't respect another person's privacy, which they certainly didn't respect ours, then they just came in and out however they wanted to. And in doing that, they destroyed the privacy and the intimacy of Jewish home life. Then what happened is that the Jews were able to get around it, and they were still able to ensure that they were to continue their family life. And because of that, they brought a new decree. The Greeks brought a new decree. And what was the new decree? The new decree was that the women were not allowed to go to the mikveh. That was a decree. And once again, we think about our grandmothers in Russia and Lithuania, that they would go in this freezing cold waters. So the Jews always make a plan, right? If something's important enough to yourself, you make a plan. And then the Hellenists got wind of this, and so they brought the most terrible decree. And the most terrible decree was that the night of the wedding, that before the husband and wife would be able to be together, have yichud, the governor of the place would not be allowed. He would force himself on the bride. And because of that, no one wanted to get married. So since they didn't want to get married, therefore they shut down their all marriages, and there were hundreds of women that were unmarried. And you can imagine what that did to the Jewish people. Now, why is that so important? The reason why that's so important is because when we light our candles, on the outside of our homes, to be mefarse in the nation, to advertise the miracle. Well, the miracle that we're advertising, really on a very simple level, is the maintenance of the Jewish household. We're saying, like we do with the mezuzah, this is a Jewish house, but the mezuzah is really for me to remember that as I walk through the door and I recognize Hashem's presence in my home. Whereas the Chanukah candles are for me to say this is to someone else. There's a great nation. And what's that great nation? That great miracle is that Am Yisrael are still existing, and we're still existing in our families and within our homes. And that's just, by the way, an important thing to understand. But if we understand that, then we understand the importance of that light. But the importance of that light now needs to be discussed on a much deeper level, because where do we first find the concept of light? And if we can understand that, then you will see it'll be just glorious and amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spotlight again, share my screen again, and we're going to look through this Midrash. The Midrash says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda bar Simon. Rabbi Yehuda bar Simon said the following: Or shebara kadosh baruch hu b'yom harishon. That light, Hashem creates the world. The first thing He does, Vayehi or, you all know that, He creates this light. What is this light? Adam tzofeu mabit bo misofa lo ad sofa, that a human being could use that light to have absolute clarity from one side of the world to the other. It was unbelievable what this light brought. But kaivan shehistakel HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'anshei dor hamabu, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw the people of the flood, the generation of the flood, of Anshei dor hafloga, and the people of the generation of the dispersion, shema'aseim makul kalim, that their deeds were terrible, they were not able to maintain appropriate behavior. Ahmad, what did he do? He took that light, he took that light and he put it away for the tzaddikim la'atid lavo, for the tzaddikim at some future date. So that's according to Rabbi Yehuda bar Simon, that this light lasted for 10 generations and then it was taken away. But Rabbi Levy b'shem Rabbi Zaira Amar, but Rabbi Levy b'shem Rabbi Zaira is something different. Listen to this, because this is in Mamish Geshmak. He says, Lamed Vav Sha'ot Shimsha Oto Ha'ora. That light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, how long did it last for? According to Rabbi Yehuda bar Simon, it lasted for 10 generations. But according to Rabbi Levy, he says, no, it didn't last for that long. The first thing we have to understand is, when did that light that Hashem created at the beginning of creation actually manifest itself? Because if the light of the creation at the beginning of creation was there so that the human being could see from one side of the world to the other with absolute clarity, it only really becomes apparent when? At the creation of Adam HaRishon. Which is correct, because only the human beings can use that light. No one else needs that light. Everything else was just the normal light, the sun, the moon, the stars, all those different things. This is a specific light, a light that enables and empowers us to see on a different level. So he says, it lasted for 36 hours. Now, 36 hours is not a long time. How does he work that out? So let's understand. Adam HaRishon is created on Friday morning. Okay? For 12 hours of Friday, from the morning to Friday night, that's the first 12 hours of the light. And then another 12 hours of the night of Shabbos. And another 12 of Shabbos day itself. So you've got 36 hours of this light manifesting itself for Adam HaRishon to see it. But then what happens? We know that at midday of Friday, of Erev Shabbos, Adam HaRishon and Chava go wonky. It's an unbelievable thing. When you really think about it, 6 hours. It only took them 6 hours to destroy everything. Okay? But, so they in the middle of that, what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to do now with that light that he's given them to see unbelievable clarity? He says, you know what I'm going to do? It's Shabbos coming. I'm going to leave it for them over Shabbos. And I'm going to leave it for them over Shabbos to use as they need to use it. And then I'm going to take it away. And therefore, what happens is the sun starts setting Motzei Shabbos. But the sun sets every day. But this time, because the light is now being taken away because it's no longer Shabbos, darkness begins. Adam HaRishon and Chava had never seen such a thing. They'd never seen darkness. They'd always been involved in this light that they could see from one side of the world to the other. When it's Yarei Adam HaRishon and they're terrified. What did Hashem do? He brought him two like flints and he smashed the one against the other. And light came out of it, not flame, light. And he made a brocha, and that brocha is Borei Morei Ha'ish. That's why the brocha that we make at Havdalah is Borei Morei Ha'ish, because of the light that Adam HaRishon created on that first Motzei Shabbos, because the other light was had disappeared. But now my question to you is, ladies, what's that got to do with Chanukah? What's it got to do with Chanukah? So the answer to that question, okay, is first let's look at the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov says an amazing thing. The Baal Shem Tov says that Shakadosh Baruch Hu ganaz ha'or hazeh, that Hashem hid that light. V'he'ach ganzu. What do you do with it? Achar shu or gadol shayam alei kol ha'olam. This is such a huge light. It's a huge light that it's so big, it's so powerful, it's so magnificent, so luminous. What is he going to do with this? A human being can see from one place of the other world to the other, one place of the world to the other. Amarhu. So the Baal Shem Tov says, you know where HaKadosh Baruch Hu put that light? There's one thing greater than that light. There's one thing bigger than that light, and that's the Torah. Why? The Torah is bigger than the whole world. We know that because Hashem looked into the Torah and created the world. The Torah is the blueprint of the world. It's much bigger than the world as it is. A person who teaches Torah and learns Torah, lishma, for its own sake, that person will be zoicha, will merit to feel that light. And if that's the case, so the hidden light is not there, it's not disappeared, it's actually embedded in the world. It's just we need to be able to access it. And the question is, where do we access it from? So in order to understand it, let's just look a little bit at Chanukah, because Chanukah is really going to give us that answer. If you look at Chanukah, how many candles do we light over the course of Chanukah according to the Mahadran opinion of Beit Hillel, which is what we paskin like? So every night we start with one, and over the 8 nights being priests. And if you do the maths, it works out to be, anyone know? Anyone want to offer an answer? How many candles we light over Chanukah? I'll put you out of your misery. 36. There are 36 candles that we light over the course of Chanukah. And we just learned the number 36. We learned the number 36 from the Midrash, which tells us that there were 36 hours of this Or Haganus, of this light that was now hidden by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right, after Shabbos, and they're 36 candles of Chanukah. And if they're 36 candles of Chanukah, which correspond to the 36 lights that are 36 hours, then it must be that each one of those candles that we light on the night of Chanukah has got a much deeper thing than just simply a light of Chanukah. But rather, as we light each one of those candles, it brings into our world part of that Or Haganus, part of that light that was hidden away by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But how does it bring it into our world? It brings us into our world because, as the Baal Shem Tov told us, that the light of Chanukah, the light of the Or HaGanuz is sitting where? It's sitting in the Torah. We speak about education of our children, of our grandchildren, and we have to ask ourselves, what does that education really mean? What are we supposed to be focusing on? So the reality is, I think that whilst obviously they need to be able to earn a trade, and that's a Mishnah in Kiddushin that says we've got to teach our children a trade. At the same time, what is the focus of our education? So the focus of our education has to be, firstly, the Or HaGanuz has to be to bring out that light into the world. And that's why Chanukah is the same word as chinuch, as education. We started all the way at the beginning. How do we educate each child according to its way? By understanding how we can inspire, connect, and whatever other way there is to them, to Torah Yisrael, to the Torah of the Jewish people. And if we're able to do that, then already we start the process of chinuch. But more than that is this beautiful idea that is brought by Rav Shlomo Yosef Zevin. Rav Zevin quotes from a pasuk. There's a pasuk, once again, also in Mishlei. It's a beautiful pasuk that we've used, but we only use half of it most times. The pasuk says the following. Just want to get it. It says, Ner Hashem nishmat Adam, chofeis kol chadrei vatim. The Ner Hashem nishmat Adam. The life force of the human being is the Ner Hashem, is the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chofeis kol chadrei bet, and you use it, the neshama, it gets used to search the very essence of the human being. Says Rav's, an amazing thing, that the light of the soul needs to dwell in the far corners of man and to shed light on one's whole body. And the light of Torah needs to be manifest now and in the future in all four corners of the world, and to shed light on all that causes darkness in the universe. And the fire, the or, that symbolized that Adam HaRishon created, symbolizes burning and the destruction of evil. Fire burns the evil forces on the soul of man, and fire destroys the evil force that materialize in the whole world. Beit Shila and Beit Shammai are arguing, what is our work about in this world? How are we supposed to rekindle that Or HaGanuz? How are we supposed to rekindle that light that was hidden by Hashem? Beit Shammai says, there's no chance that you can elevate yourself without destroying everything else. And so therefore, he starts with 8. And 8 is a powerful amount of light, and each day you just get less and less and less. Why? Because each day means that you've destroyed more and more and more of the negative forces. But Hillel says, no, you can't just destroy like that. Don't just destroy, rather do something else. Bring that light, manifest that light from the darkness. And the more light we bring, the more darkness we're able to push away. And so therefore, really, what happens is that the light of the Chanukah, the lights of Chanukah, are not just lights that we light, but there's something we say, Hanerot halalu kodesha, that these lights are holy. How come these lights are holy? What happened to the lights, Shabbos lights? The Shabbos candles are not holy, by the way. There's no holiness in Shabbos candles. Shabbos candles are there for a very utilitarian purpose, and that is to make sure that we have light in our homes. Now, in our world in which we have electric lights, so what is the role of Shabbos candles? So it's interesting. It's an interesting question. Do you need to light Shabbos candles? Of course you do. But what many of the poskim suggest is that what you should do is that you should light your candles, then switch on the lights, or let the time switch on the lights, or however you do it, and then make the bracha. So you light the candles. Before you light the candles, you would bring in, that the way it seems to be explained, you bring in swimming, this like breaststroke kind of thing. And it's a bit of a joke, but you bring it in like that, and then you cover your eyes and you say the bracha. Why do we do that? We do that because we can't, when we do a mitzvah, you always make the bracha and then do the mitzvah, but you can't do that with Hadlakas Neiros for Shabbos, because if you make the bracha, you can't light the candles, because the bracha is the thing that brings Shabbos in for you. So therefore, you light the candles, you cover your eyes, and you make the bracha, and then you open up to see the light. But that's why you should light the candles, switch on the lights, so that the candles are the primary light, bringing in the light of Shabbos. There's no kedusha to them. But the lights of Chanukah have Kedusha. Why do the lights of Chanukah have Kedusha? Because the lights of correspond to the 36 candles, to the 36 lights, 36 hours of the Or Haganus, of this light that was hidden. And therefore each one of them is holy. It's the holiest light in the world. And it's the light that can enlighten, empower, and bring light to our lives. We have to just decide, how do we deal with Chanukah candles? Do we deal with them just simply as these lights that we light and then we go and eat our latkes? Or do we deal with them in an understanding that this is the light that is going to bring the light of Hashem into our world, because it's Chanukah. Chanukah means chinuch. How are we going to use that light to shed light on the way we will go forward to educate our children, our grandchildren, and our families over Chanukah and over the rest of the year? Just a few ideas that I thought would hopefully bring something new into your Chanukah experience. Next week, there won't be a shir because I'm going to be away, and Bezrat Hashem, then Chanukah will already have started. So I wanted to give you the shir before. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Have a good week.
You
Thank
too.
you, Rabbi.